Before the Iran war, hashtag bars. Listen, before the war, there were so many things that were different than they are right now. Uh, Parts of my house used to be white. Now they're iron ore and black. We also were not in March Madness. Now we are. There's just so many things that have changed, but things that are important that have changed. I literally took a couple day break from talking about the war because there really hadn't been any significant changes until I saw something this weekend that sparked my interest. I spent a lot of time on ladders and doing projects and using multi tools and just having a good old time, right? But before this war, Iran did not have seemingly complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. Now it does. Before this war, Iran sanctioned oil was not allowed to just flow freely. Not only is it flowing all over the place and not being stopped, but they're no longer sanctioned. We kind of removed some of that stuff. Before the war, Iran was enriching uranium. They were trying to stick to this nuclear non-proliferation agreement that they signed. They're still on that agreement, but now, according to their parliament and their foreign minister, they intend to go from just enriching uranium to trying to get a ballistic warhead together. In other words, build an entire nuke. Before the war, U.S. bases in the Gulf were assets, and now they seem like liabilities. And we have stuff all over the place where we're not moving some of our equipment and they're being destroyed. But none of those things really made me want to make a video. But the biggest thing that really saw for me is before the war, inflation was going down. Now it's going back up. Before the war, crude oil prices were down. Now they seem to be going back up. These things I'm talking about right now affect your boy's pockets. They affect my bills, how much I put in my car, how much it's time to buy stuff for Easter, when it's time to buy stuff for this summertime and planning vacations. Hell, it could affect the holidays and Christmas and shit like that. Hopefully it does not. But bro, like before the war, there was so many things that we didn't concern ourselves with that we are concerning ourselves with now. As mentioned earlier, the Iranian parliament just passed a bill to impose fees in the Strait of Hormuz. And this is the thing. We've already seen several vessels get through the Strait of Hormuz after breaking Iran off some bread. Even if the oil didn't originate from Iran, if it originated from another Gulf state, right? If you break Iran off some bread, you can get your oil India, you can get your oil China, you can get your oil South Korea. Now, the South Koreans haven't broken off any bread yet, but we have seen the Indians do it. We've seen China do it. And now they're going to impose, they're thinking about imposing fees if you want to actually traverse the strait. And we're seeing that, the possibility of them imposing fees and all that type of stuff. But then on top of all of that, we're also concerning ourselves with the Houthis seem to have activated themselves on behalf of Iran. This is what we saw from Scott Bessent. He's the Treasury Secretary, but he's also super involved in a lot of these talks all over the place. Let's just see what he had to say about some of this stuff.
Are you concerned at all about the Houthis getting involved? They shelled Israel with two rockets. Are you worried about the Red Sea?
Not as much. The Houthis have been very quiet so far. I think that the shelling was Israel specific. This time last year, we had a bombing campaign against the Houthis, and they've maintained, they've been pretty quiet so far, and I would expect them to likely remain that way.
I don't like, here's my big thing when it comes to like the news, rap, and all that type of stuff. The daily play-by-play of like war is the thing that gives Americans complacency. Imagine you're watching Fox and Friends, you see him get on there, and you're worried about will oil prices go up higher because you have to worry about places like the Suez Canal. You have to worry about the Bab el Mandeb. I can't pronounce the name of that other canal, that other strait that is damn near directly where the Houthis are at. You're already worried about the Strait of Hormuz. Like 20% of the world's oil goes through these areas so that they don't have to go completely around Africa. And now you're hearing this guy get on and saying, I'm not too worried about it. They were just throwing lobs at Israel, our greatest ally, who, has a lot of influence on some of the decisions we make on whether we're going to do more war plans or not. I mean, look at how this map looks. Okay. If we take a look at this, we see that the Houthis being activated now is not a good thing. We see the Strait of Hormuz on the east side of this map, go around Oman towards Yemen, where the Houthis are at. And we see that first strait that we have to worry about contention. We have to worry about, is this something that could slow down, could cause prices to go up even more? Going northern towards the Suez Canal as you go through the Red Sea, that's the easiest and most precise way to get to the Mediterranean and not have to go all the way around Africa. So we're seeing these different examples. We see the petroleum pipeline that Saudi Arabia sees so freaking important that they get their oil up out of there. They're no longer wanting to 100% solely depend on waiting around for the Strait of Hormuz to open up. They're now trying to get their pipeline up to 7 million barrels per day going from east to west so that they can put it in the Red Sea. But if you have the Houthis now activated, and they're not going to be lobbing missiles or whatever in vessels in the Red Sea or all the way up to Israel, that's a whole nother concern that we have to think about. None of this stuff was the case before we started the war. But now we have even more strategic targets that we have to worry about coming from the Gulf of Aden, going up to the Red Sea, et cetera, et cetera. Several hundred U.S. Special Operation Forces, including Army Rangers and SEALs, have arrived in the Middle East. We are now have more troops in the Middle East than there are normally stationed there. Over 50,000 troops are at the ready. Support, logistics, infantry, special operators, et cetera, et cetera. The 82nd Airborne, you have Marines there, you have Delta Force. You have so many different options. Why are so many people there? Because if you put a plan in front of the president, he needs to have options. And it seems to be we're at that point. We're at that point where we can basically try to execute whatever we want. But I want the number one thing that we execute is diplomacy and to end all this stuff, because anything that takes us to the next level, you're seeing the Houthis being activated, militia groups that are sympathetic to the Iranians in Iraq have already been activated. Who the hell else do we have to worry about? Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah. Just so many going on all over the place. And now we're seeing even more that we have so many troops in the area that we can do anything, but that doesn't mean we should do anything. Now, one thing I will say is that you see the president once again, right before markets opening, he sent out a truth on Truth Social, serious discussions with the new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. He says, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating the electrical generating plants, et cetera, et cetera. He's basically saying like, hey, listen, go ahead, have these talks, or we're going to go and blow up your civilian stuff. But the thing is, Iran keeps saying that they're not having direct talks with the U.S. They're not having it through secondary sources or third sources. They're not doing any of this stuff. And so it seems to be that these messages come out right before markets open or right after markets close. And depends on when it is how aggressive the message is. Before markets open, seems to be for the last 2 weeks, President Trump has been putting out things that kind of ease the prices of stuff. And right after markets close on like a weekend, he's putting out way more aggressive stuff. So what we really have to pay attention to is what the world is saying about this energy crisis and how this could be affecting stuff all over the place. If we see here, Bloomberg is reporting that the energy industry is warning that the crisis is only the beginning. We're expecting there's a possible that prices could spike to the level that forces consumers and businesses to fly, drive, and spend much less money. That's if the Strait of Hormuz opens or stays closed, rather. So imagine you entering a war. The consequences of that war is that the main adversary of the war closes off something that affects the entire effing world. Is there another example of something like this? And I'm the type of person that likes to try to be a man of history. I try to take a look at stuff and be like, all right, let's see, when we did Vietnam, this happened and the Viet Cong did this, or during World War II, this happened and then the Germans did this, or this thing happened. And is there a direct example where a war started and that adversary affected the entire world without using their military? I don't know if there's another example. Somebody comment down below. Let me know if you have another example of something being that influential. So is it something we need to be worried about? Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, not only are we worried about the cost of our pockets going up, but now the president is floating the idea that Arab countries would have to pay for the cost of the Iran war, says the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt, but saying that President Trump would have more things to say about this issue. She just said this minutes before I started recording this video. So how does that work? Do they send us the transfers of money? Do they send it to us in offsets of cost? Like how does that work if we were to try to get them to pay for a war that not every single one of them asked for? I mean, is that something that we would have to think about? Imagine you're one of those states that calls yourself an Arab country, not a Persian country. You're sitting there, you're kind of chilling out, right? And all of a sudden this war pops off and you are, Iraq, or you're Kuwait, or you are Bahrain. You're the Emiratis. Maybe even consider Oman, not really a part of the Persian Gulf, but let's just say you're one of those countries. And the war's over. We say, hey, so what's up, UAE? You know what I'm saying? Run me that check, bro. But like, what? We didn't want y'all to do this war. Excuse me, Kuwait. We know we have a base there. Yeah, we do. We also need you to pay for the war we just got done wrapping up. Yeah, I appreciate that. Bahrain, we know you're the Las Vegas for Saudi Arabia. You know what I'm saying? Y'all already got you got a lot of hookers over there. You got a lot of hair braiders and babysitters and shit. We also need our money. Okay, we need both of those at the same time. That's something I don't know if it's going to pass very well. It might go over kind of like, I don't know, nothing that I could think of. Nothing immediately where people would be chomping at the bit to be the person that would say, yeah, we're down with that. But speaking of the war, I made my prediction that I think that this could take no more than 6 weeks. And my last video, I was pretty just wavering from that. I'm hoping that I'm right, but I'm feeling more and more like I'm going to be wrong. But then I saw this from the press secretary earlier that leads me to believe, X, there is hope, sir. There is still hope. Let's just see what she had to say earlier.
On the time frame, President Trump initially said about 4 weeks. Secretary of State Rubio on Friday reportedly said it might be another 2 to 4. Is 2 to 4 the current ballpark that the administration is thinking?
With respect to the timeline, again, the President, Commander-in-Chief, the Pentagon has always stated 4 to 6 weeks estimated timeline for Operation Epic Fury. We're on day 30 today. So again, you do the math on how much longer the Pentagon needs to fully achieve the objectives of Operation Epic Fury, which I will reiterate: destroy the Iranian Navy, destroy their ballistic missiles, dismantle their missile and drone production infrastructure, significantly weaken their proxies throughout the course of this operation, and then, of course, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon.
So we're almost done. She just laid out the objectives. Seems like we're going to be wrapping those up really soon. But here's the thing. Imagine you are waiting around for something and the enemy gives you the timeline of how long you got to survive. Wouldn't you just try to hold off and survive for that long? Because their ballistic missile program is done deep inside of a mountain. They're still making the missiles. They're still launching them. Okay, we're 30 days in, as she mentioned. They're still launching missiles towards Israel nightly. The drones are made deep inside of a mountain. The enriched uranium is in deep inside of a mountain. The regime has gone down to the sun. And so I'm not sure what objective we could achieve during this 6 weeks other than them waiting it out. Okay. Other than them waiting it out. That's why I think this only ends in the 6 weeks, not because we achieve those objectives. In my opinion, that's not going to be the way we make this shit happen. I think it happens when we get back to being America first and we go with diplomacy and we just freaking swallow our pride, remove some of the hubris, and we keep it real and we just do diplomacy to get us out of this situation. Because I don't see it going down any other way than that. But, what do I know? Okay. One thing I do know is that we don't want to get into it with this freaking great power of North Korea. A little off topic, but I got to show y'all the sauce that they got cooking up over there, man. Look at this. Like, this is North Korea's elite special forces, letting us know that they're super elite. Now, I'm not knocking the ability for men to punch through wood or to put nails through wood without a hammer, or to, is that a pickaxe? Bro, okay, listen, these dudes they not playing around. I mean, this dude is slapping the tops of bottles off and stuff. Did he just use his head to go through whatever? I don't know what material that is. That's intense. That's intense. But here's the thing. If we wouldn't have started this war, there's a possibility Iran would have just got done enriching uranium. You know what I'm talking about? And they could have just started training some of their people to do random shit like the North Koreans are doing. Now, of course, we wouldn't go out to North Korea because they whole way got not only enriched uranium, but they got nuclear weapons. So that Iran was like a baby North Korea. But all that to say, I'm hoping this ends soon. But with the Houthis jumping in and with Israel pushing further into Lebanon, I don't know if I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to wrap this up within the 6-week time frame. All the troops that we have at the president's disposal to go after those 3 islands that I talked about last week, they're already there. And if you want to know more about the 3 island strategies that I just talked about, I'm going to link that video up for you here. But first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not the first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.